Hi, welcome to Lafff, Live Abroad for Financial Fitness. I want to thank you and congratulate you on taking this opportunity to accept our invitation to watch this video, to further understand exactly what Lafff is and how you can use living abroad as a financial strategy for your life and for your future. As noted before, Lafff has three pillars. 1, achieving financial fitness. 2, in a shorter amount of time. And 3, while maintaining or enhancing your standard of living. And this is all done by moving to a country where there is what we call a discounted economic reality. What that means quite simply is in many countries of this world, you can go and take your current income, and that income has a value of a multiple much bigger than where you're at. And so instead of trying to make more money, you simply multiply the value of the money you have by moving to one of these countries. But the question is, how real is that? How real is this discounted economic reality? What you're about to see is a panel conversation of 5 expats, plus myself, discussing the realities of living in these other countries. What the reality is of living in these countries economically, and also more specifically, what is the standard of living and quality of life that you can expect while you do this? So, take a minute and listen carefully to what each panel member says. They come from different stations of life, different walks of life, and in different life situations. As a result, hopefully be able to see how this could be possible for you. Take a listen. I'll see you on the other side. Hi all, Daryl Ford here with Lafff, and I have the pleasure of having a panel of international expats with me to discuss one of the more important tenets of Lafff, the thing that makes it work, the idea of moving to a foreign country to enjoy the discounted economic reality of living in another country. All too often you hear about people going and living in a foreign country and paying $500 a month for a 4,000 square foot home. And you just say, though, that's just impossible. That's just not true. Well, it is. And myself and the people on this screen that you see have enjoyed those realities. And those realities are the things that make Lafff work. Make Lafff work as a financial strategy that you can utilize to get where you want in this life economically in a much shorter period of time. So with us today are Gail Turner, Carmen Melseth, Waldo Hampton, and Gwen Hyatt. And let me invite each of them to introduce themselves. Gail?
Hello, my name is Gail Turner, as Daryl said, and I am from Washington, D.C., but spent the most of my adult life in Maryland. And I went from Maryland to Medellin, Colombia, where I lived there for about 2 years. And it was great. And I'll get into more, after we introduce everybody about how I was ever able to live in Medellin at an extremely reasonable price on a retirement income.
Thank you, Gail. Carmen?
Hi, I'm Carmen Melseth. I am originally from the States, mostly from Arizona, and I spent 3 years in Ecuador and am now going on my 4th year in Portugal.
Thank you. Excellent. Waldo?
My name is Waldo Hampton. I'm from Florida, and I work as a software developer remotely. I've been living in Ecuador with my wife for the last 5 years.
Thank you, Waldo. And Gwen Hyatt?
Hi, Gwen Hyatt. I'm originally from Arizona, and I'm retired and one of those serial nomads who bumps around from country to country as long as the visa will allow me to stay. And I lived in Ecuador, Mexico, and Costa Rica, and am now checking out Portugal.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for being here and having this conversation. And we do want to have this conversation, right? Lafff is all about 3 pillars: achieving financial fitness in a shorter amount of time while maintaining or enhancing your standard of living. And so the goal here is to really look at living overseas as a financial strategy in order for you to recognize economic benefits that you would like to have in a shorter amount of time. And those strategies could be something as simple as, when I return back home, I want to have runway. I want to have 1, 2, 3 years of economic runway. So if something happens, I'm good. I'm fine. It could be I want to pay off a house. So I have a target, $250,000. I want to be able to go away, save that money, come back in 2, 3, 4 years, and be able to do that, right? Send my kids to college, whatever your plan is, your strategy is, to look at your income, your current income, and where you could potentially go to realize a discounted economic reality to the point where within that shorter amount of time, you're able to succeed, right? So typical financial strategies are, well, I work more, I make more money, I invest it, and hopefully in 10, 15 years, I can be where I'd like to be. Lafff says, well, perhaps you can be there in less than 5. But that all comes down to us choosing the right company and the right economics based on our income in order to reach our goal. It is, though, pretty clear that sometimes when many of you perhaps have heard the stories of people going overseas and living this discounted economic reality, and it just seems like it's untrue, but it's not. I've lived it, everyone on the screen has lived it or is living it. So I'll start with my little story, right? And then we'll kind of move around the screen a little bit and talk to everybody. I'm in Ecuador, and I'm sitting in a, I don't know, 6,000 square foot house, 4 floors, 6 bedrooms, huge American kitchen, small kitchen in the back, inside courtyard, and looking at a contract for $900 a month and saying there's something wrong here. It just, I bet that can't be right. But it was just fine. In fact, people from Ecuador were telling me you're paying too much. It should be $800, $850. But that was totally fine. When I compared that to the $3,000 a month I was paying for a house half the size in Florida, the realities are just what they are. The realities are just what they are. And so let's kind of start moving around the panel a bit and start getting some perspectives on how this can work for different people in different life situations. So Gail, let's start with you. Tell us a bit about your jaunt to Colombia.
So yeah, this is great. So here's the thing. As I began to approach early retirement, not the full retirement that we all are accustomed to, but early retirement, because I didn't want to wait. I looked at what I was going to get and I thought, how am I going to live in Maryland on this? This is not going to work. So different things took place, but bottom line is I started looking at where could this money help? Where could I work with this? And bottom line is I ended up in Medellin, Colombia. And as Daryl indicated, that is totally correct. I loved my apartment. I did. I lived in a small barrio known as Sabaneta in Medellin. But my apartment, I was in a gated community. So we had they call it a porteria, which is like a concierge. So I got called, people had to call me in order to come up. So it's very safe, which is something a lot of people are concerned about. But my apartment itself, I had a full 2-bedroom apartment with a full kitchen. I had an office. Well, the other bedroom was an office. I had a real living room, a real dining room. It wasn't all squished together. I had a balcony and a hammock. All of my utilities were included. All of my water, my electricity, everything was included. With all of that, at the time, it was about $500 a month. I just checked today because of the fluctuation in currency, it's $407. That's what I was paying. That did not come anywhere close to what it was in Maryland. I mean, you can't even get a room for that, much less a 3-bedroom. And so what it enabled me to do was to take my income that I was getting from Social Security, and I was able to, just like you said, save a bunch of it because I was single. So it was just me. I don't eat a lot. My food bill wasn't a lot. And I didn't have to pay for anything else. So it was fabulous. So that was my experience there. Uber, a 30-minute Uber cost me like $2.50 to $3 in Medellin. I came back to the States. I just went somewhere for 30 minutes and it cost me $30. That's the kind of lifestyle that you can have. You didn't have to have a car. You could go anywhere. Transportation was great. It's very cosmopolitan city. So the infrastructure was very up to date. It's a developing country, but it was like first world as far as I was concerned for what I was able to get and the lifestyle I was able to have.
So I have a question for you. So you mentioned you took the early retirement, right? So from a work perspective, you're not done yet, right?
Right. No.
So how did that work out for you? Your early retirement, your budget in country, and now your capacity perhaps to move around and do other things that if you stayed where you were at, were just simply not considerations.
Because I was able to have, as you call it, such a discounted lifestyle. And actually, I really don't even like calling it that. Because of the type of cost of living of where I was, I upgraded my lifestyle, right? I went out to eat more. I did more things. The other thing was then I could also bounce around from, I could go from Medellin to Cartagena, then you go to the beach and, the flights were very, very inexpensive to go from place to place. And so as a result, I'm now, again, I'm leaving next week to go to both Madrid and Portugal and Lisbon. But with the concept of saying, oh, okay, let me look at that. So one of the things that it did for me when I got out of the States, because when you're in the States, you think this is all there is. And it's just, you just going to have a very expensive life and you got to figure it out. But what it did when I moved and lived somewhere else, the light bulb started flashing, which was saying, whoa, wait a minute. There are other countries that I can live on with the US dollar that gives me a better lifestyle, better health insurance. Oh my gosh, I was able to see a doctor and they did everything and it was like $30. I came home, saw my eye doctor for 15 minutes and it was $200. That's a huge difference. So, you have a better lifestyle. So that's why I really don't even want to call it discounted. It doesn't cost as much, but your quality of life improves dramatically. And then it opens your mind to where else can I live that I can do this. That not only now you're thinking that, you've been able to save the money to be able to take that next step. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. Thank you for your comments.
Yeah.
So let's chat a little bit with you, Carmen, on your experiences. I know you come from a corporate background. Tell us a bit about how you got from there to a few countries.
So I had spent 20 years at Intel as a marketing communications manager. And after 20 years, I was ready for change. So I decided I was going to take a couple years off and just do something completely different. And I had some friends that were going to Ecuador and I decided to follow their path. And so I had 2 years of just a break from everything that was routine and all consuming about, the corporate lifestyle and just all that. Took a couple of years off, lived very, very comfortably in a beautiful apartment. Like Gail was saying, in these places, it's not terribly expensive to have a gorgeous riverside apartment. I mean, it's just gorgeous. I think back and I think that's one of my most beautiful apartments I've ever lived in. It was a wonderful place to be able to take walks and to just stop and enjoy life. But after 2 years, then I needed to get back to working because, I saved the money and kind of gone through that savings, but I had a buffer still. But then I found some remote work, marketing again. And so from there on, I've just been working remotely for a couple different companies. After 3 years in Ecuador, decided to try out Portugal. And so now I've been here almost 4 years. And it, to me, it's become home. I love everything about it here. The climate is great and, all the luxuries, but also the mental growth too. The exposure to Spanish in Ecuador, now Portuguese. I think it's so good for my mind and also socially. So I just find it very stimulating intellectually and financially. Well, it's more expensive here than Ecuador. It's still far less than what I would be paying in the United States. So from a financial fitness perspective, this is still very sound. I'm able to live comfortably, work remotely, and still have room to play, to travel to other places in Portugal. Like next weekend, I'm going to Porto for the weekend, and not terribly expensive to just zip away. And then Spain is in the future. I just have access to some really great places to go, and and new friends. So it's been a very stimulating change from that corporate, all-encompassing lifestyle to now kind of this freedom to live comfortably and have room to be experience life.
Yeah, and I think we'll chat with Walt a little bit, but it's the same thing, because both yourselves and myself come from this corporate kind of world. And it's no bashing on corporate, right? I mean, it serves its purpose. It's good in many, many ways. There's a bit of a blinders, how you march down the path. It's a bit liberating and interesting when you move overseas, and your $100,000 is actually worth $400,000, and you kind of go, oh, I mean, things you never thought of doing, you can now do because you feel like it. Don't necessarily have to plan for it. Don't necessarily have to budget it. You can do it because, you and I are in Portugal, right? And I'm going to see some friends in Sorrento in Italy next month coming up. And I went on Ryanair to check it out. It's $36 per person to go round trip to Naples, right? These are things that, sitting back home in Florida and Tampa, I wouldn't even think of it, right? And we're fine, we're doing well, all those things, but that kind of mobility would have to be planned for, would have to be budgeted for, thought through. Now it's just a weekend whim because we feel like it. And that's the difference. How much of that have you felt, Carmen, as you moved around Ecuador and now Portugal? That ability to just kind of do things on a whim because you have the funds to do it.
And the time.
Yes.
Right. I think the time is also like a bigger factor too. It's access, time, and finances.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, the opportunity to do something that would have been super exotic when I was in my previous lifestyle now is still exciting, but it's not that, wow, it's so out of reach. No, it's a 4-hour drive or 30-minute flight.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you so much for those comments. Appreciate that. So Waldo, our other company man, tell us about your experience and some of your thoughts.
Well, I'll tell you what, something that I relate to, Gail was speaking about it, was how in the States, most people have this idea that this is all there is. But to explore something outside of the States, I think to a lot of people, like never comes to mind. I don't know, there must be reasons for it, but really the important thing is that you and me, we don't have those blinders on. We can explore other countries, other ways of living, other ways of working. And in my case, I've worked in software development for about, well, over 20 years now. And I've gone remote and in person back and forth over the last 20 years. But really the last 7 or 8 years, I've been fully remote while in the States. Being remote just kind of opened it up to, hey, we can live anywhere we want. So we can look at some places in the States, but Ecuador seemed attractive. We moved to Ecuador. And the idea was, it's not like I'm giving up and selling everything I own to achieve this exotic dream of living in Ecuador that's going to consume all of my resources. Let's go. It's inexpensive, so let's go and try it out for a little bit. And if we like it, we'll stay. And if not, then we'll try somewhere else. So that's what we did. It turns out we've been here for 5 years now. We really enjoyed it. To Carmen's point, we actually right now, I think, simultaneously live in the least expensive housing we've ever lived and also most beautiful housing we've ever lived. Riverside, concierge downstairs, walking distance to so many things. We like to go out and dance. We like to go out and get a cup of coffee. We like to go out and have a nice wine and steak dinner, and all of those things are available at a hugely reduced cost. So I'm still doing what I would be doing in the States. I'm working as a software developer, but the difference is that my money goes much farther down here because everything is much more inexpensive, especially the housing and the food.
Yeah, one of the things that we want people to understand about Lafff is being very clear about their financial goals. This is a financial strategy, right? Comes with a bunch of benefits, and 3 people so far, 4, have talked about the life benefits, right? Remember, of the three pillars in Lafff, that last one is maintaining or enhancing your standard of living. And you get to Gwen, she'll say the same thing, right? We've all done that. But, depending on where you're at in life, right, you may very well decide that I want to go back home, which there's no problem with that. But with what, for what purpose? And so that idea of, as kind of we mentioned before, having that goal, I want to pay off a house, send the kids to college, have an extra, 2, 3, 4 years of runway, whatever that is, right? So now because you have this extra money, once again, things you haven't thought of before you want to do, and that could threaten, what that target is. So part of Lafff is being very intentional about all that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing that, right? If you're in that life situation and, you want to show your kids Thailand, we'll go, right? But just understand that might mean that 3-year plan may be 3.5 years now, which is anything wrong with that either. What you've done for your kids in the meantime, right? Enrich their experience, their life, and everything else. So it's whatever we do is being conscious about it so that Lafff works for us, all the levels we would like it to. So Gwen, moving on to.
Well, I'd like to expound on what everyone else has stated. I certainly agree and appreciate all their comments. And I'm going to purchase from when I was living in Oaxaca, Mexico, not long ago. And I found when I did my budgets that I was living quite comfortably on about $1,500 a month as a single person. And obviously, if you had a spouse or a partner and you each had $1,500 a month, I mean, you could live really quite extravagantly. And what it allowed me to do is not moving down to Oaxaca for a certain length of time. I decided to keep my townhome in Arizona, and I could rent that as additional income. And I have not had to tap into any retirement investments and lived at a very comfortable lifestyle. So if you look at Oaxaca, Mexico specifically, the current exchange rate is about 20 pesos to $1. For Canadian, it's about 15 pesos to $1 Canadian dollar. So for my budget of about $1,500 a month, that paid for comfortable accommodation. I could go out for dinner, enjoy mole, pozole, mezcal. I could join the English-speaking library, provided lectures, tours, hiking. I could join the local aquatics center and swim there, rent a bike if I want to get out to some of the small pueblos. Also to language school, Spanish language school, several days a week. Now, obviously, this $1,500 a month did not include health care, but I found health care extremely inexpensive as compared to the United States in terms of dental, eye care, just basic medical expenses were probably less than you would pay for insurance in the United States. So the big savings were in the cost of living, the housing, food, dining out, recreation, healthcare. And with that savings, then you could save up for your next travel adventure and buying your airfare for the next country where you'd like to check out and going for a little explore over there. And I still have not had to tap into any retirement savings, which is really a nice feeling.
Yeah, it is.
In the United States, I would have definitely tapped in.
Yeah. Right. And with inflation getting close to tapped out. So, so listen, first I want to thank all of you guys for your time this afternoon and just kind of sharing your experiences. But I'd like to explore one last comment and just kind of throw this out to the panel. And it's kind of what Carmen brought up, right? Once again, those 3 pillars are financial fitness. We've talked about that. The reality of this discounted economic reality. It's very, very real, right? It varies by country. Latin America is kind of about the same everywhere you go. There might be a little bit differences with conversion rates and all that, but generally the same. The other piece of this, right, that Carmen brought up was time. There is a perception of time that's just different in these countries, in the world around you. And albeit, I own and run 2 companies and I work all the time, it's strange that I don't feel like I do. Any of you would like to expound on that a little bit? Just how different living in a different time culture has affected you?
Okay, I will. Okay, so in Colombia, one of the things that one from the United States has to learn is they have their own time. There is no such thing as hurry up. It's okay. It's cool. What is it? Don't worry, be happy. Okay. And so you learn to slow your roll. You learn to slow down. And when you do that, and Carmen mentioned this, you have the opportunity to, as they say, wake up and smell the roses. Okay. Because we in these states are so used to everything being rush, 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 rush. And the other thing, and this is like personal to me, a few months ago, my dad passed away. And so what happens is you begin to say, wow, I don't have that much time left. What am I going to do with it? How do I make this count? Because at least in this in this body, this is the only opportunity that I have. And I don't know what it'll be like in the next body, but this one, this is it. Okay. And so you learn to appreciate that slowing down. And several people have mentioned this, but being able to meet new people, explore new things. One of the things that being away, I don't really think people really realize that they'll get when you have to learn another language or you meet another culture, it enriches you. When you get out of that comfort zone thing, then you realize, wow, this lifestyle is far more enriching than when I was in the States, because you had a routine. You did the same thing every day, had the same friends, everything. You knew everything, everybody. You didn't have to learn anything. You have to stretch. But when you go to another country, you do. And then when you start appreciating time, oh, wow, I have time to do things now because my pace is slower. And then my last point, because I was thinking about this when y'all were talking, when I first got here, one of the things I realized, I was having a conversation with my son, and I said, this is the first time that my stress level is very low because I didn't have to think about how was I going to pay the mortgage or the rent? Could I pay the mortgage and buy food? Could I pay the mortgage and do this and that? It was done because it was so inexpensive. And now I can focus on, learning a language, going to this place or that place, or what is my next thing going to be, my next project, my next thing. And so that's kind of what I've learned about time, slowing it down and recognizing that time is very precious and is not something to be wasted away and to exhaust yourself in the kind of lifestyle that we were accustomed to having being in the States.
I have so enjoyed the sacredness of the lunch hours. It's like the world stops. You must have lunch. Like, you don't book meetings over lunch. I'm still working on this as a discipline, but my culture around me, or the culture I'm trying to blend into, has such a good respect for sacred mealtime. I mean, I came from drive-through lunch, like eat in your car, you're so busy. So just forcing yourself to take time to eat and like step outside and eat outside, or with friends. Like, I meet my parents for lunch maybe once a week. Where are we gonna go today? Let's go have fish at that restaurant. Oh my goodness, that's made my life so much better. And it's just lunch.
People's relationship with time, I think when you leave the States, it has to change. People will go to South America or the Caribbean or different places and on vacation and think, oh, this is so nice, it's so relaxed, it's cool. But say you move to Ecuador or somewhere, sometimes, and you have to kind of change the way you think about it. You go to the bank and it's nowhere near as fast to get something done as in the States. You go to the grocery store and it takes twice as long. And it's because everything's slower, but you can also be a part of that. You don't have to go at American speeds anymore. So everyone else is kind of chilled out. And then what's cool is you can also chill. It's a different pace of life. And if you approach it maybe, from an American perspective, you might stress yourself out. But the key is to just go with the fact that you can also be a part of that and have your own 2-hour lunches and, meet your parents at some new place every week and that kind of thing. I work 3 days a week now, and I can do that. And it's a change that you have to, it's got to click for you internally, but it can lead to some beautiful things.
Yeah.
I love what everyone just said. And the whole time perspective is so important, and it just does slow down. But the other thing that I've noticed in comparison to the United States and living outside the United States is the United States is supersized. And when you go to another country, everything is downsized. It's smaller. The houses are smaller. The cars are smaller. The people are smaller. The portion sizes are smaller. And it's just refreshing. It costs less. Kind of get into that whole mindset. I mean, that's the biggest culture shock for me whenever I zoom back into the US, is it's so fast paced and so intense and so supersized. Everything is so big.
I'll tell you one of the things I'm working on realizing myself, I've been here 3 months in Portugal, is a time differential, right? So in Latin America, depending where you're at, you're either at the worst, on one side, maybe mountain time zone, I think, in Costa Rica, and Eastern time zone might fluctuate depending on the country. That's about it. So you may have a 1-2 hour difference. I got a 5-hour difference, right? And so now, I mean, I work with people and stuff from 2 p.m. on. And depending on what I'm doing, right? Work could be to 10 o'clock at night, work could be to 6. It just depends on what is going on. But what that means is when I wake up in the morning, everyone else is sleeping, on the East Coast. I can go to the gym. I can go have breakfast with my family. We can go run errands together. And I gotta tell you how weird that was, just admitting to myself that I can do this, right? And not feel that I have to get up and run somewhere and check my phone. And there's no reason to check your phone because they're all sleeping, right? So there are nuances and things that you'll see as you do this. So once again, everybody, thank you so very much for your comments. Appreciate your insights. And I might tap on you again. So we'll talk soon. Well, I sure hope you enjoyed that video presentation. Are you more intrigued? Is the picture of how this works getting clearer and clearer to you? Well, I hope so. It should be. And maybe now as you see these things, you'll be able to start thinking, well, perhaps I could do this and I could recognize the value and the benefits of Lafff and living abroad, once again, for financial fitness. But what's next? Well, the question is the details, right? This is probably what you're asking now. Well, so I get the overall concept, but I need some more information. I need some more details. So perhaps you can start putting together the picture of how this would affect you personally. Well, here's what we have to offer you. If you click below, you'll be accepting an invitation to a webinar. This webinar is where we start the process of really getting down deeper into what Lafff is, the details of financial fitness, and how you can start using this as a strategy in your life from a financial perspective. Click the button below, accept our offer, and come into this webinar and learn more about how this can work for you. Now, to be clear, there are kind of 3 groups of people we work with when it comes to Lafff. 1 is digital nomads, 2 is digital expats, and 3 are retirees. Now, what are each of these groups? Well, digital nomads are people that travel around the world and they stay in their locations a short amount of time. Oftentimes, the reason for that is they don't want to deal with the process of getting a visa in a certain country. So the country allows them to stay in the country 3, 6 months, sometimes even a year. And so they do that and they keep on moving along. That's one model. That's one group of people. The other is what we call digital expats. So this is where I come in the picture, where I took my life in the United States and I transported it to Ecuador and then transported it to Portugal. I have a home, I have cars, my kids go to school. I simply live in that country and benefit from the discounted economic reality of my life there. Finally, there are retirees. Now, retirees for us come in 2 versions. One is what we call an economic retiree. They're in a situation where, due to the economics of their fixed income, it's tough to stay where they're at, and they would have to sacrifice much to continue to live there. Moving overseas, where there is a discounted economic reality, they can be much more easily successful. But we also have what we call lifestyle expats, where finances really aren't that much of an issue, and they're moving different places for choice. As a result of that, they too can benefit from this. because their money goes farther, their investments go farther, and once again, they have the ability to do more at this stage in life. Interested? Click the button below. Accept our offer for this webinar. Get into the details, the meat of the information to see how all this can work for you and how you can start framing that picture for yourself. The other thing we're going to do for you is help you understand the breadth of the services offered in Lafff. It's not just information we're going to throw at you and say, hey, take it and run with it. The questions remain, which country does this work the best in? And not just a discounted economic reality, but how about the standard of living? How about the quality of life? How about safety? All these other things that are very important in making this decision. What about that? We have that information for you. How about planning? Let's say you look at this and you say to yourself, this makes sense to me. I will do it one day, or is it best perhaps to select a date and have a planning tool to help you walk through that process? We can help you with that. And perhaps you need a little guidance, direction, and hand-holding in order to help you think through this and make great decisions for your family. Our personal project managers will be happy to help you do that. More intrigued? Click the button below. Accept our offer to come to this webinar and learn more about Lafff and the entire package of services that we have to support you as you make this decision for your life. Click the button below, and I'll see you in the webinar.